and welcome to episode 12 of One for the Boys podcast. We're recording this virtually, so there's no video to this one. It's going to be sound. Unless you want to do video, what do you want to do? Do you want to put it on? We can put it on YouTube, but
does it split screen?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it does now on screen. So yeah, it looks a bit different. It like flips, so whoever's talking, it flips to them.
I don't mind. I'm quite. Yeah. We can do video recording, and if it looks decent and it uploads all right, then yeah, sound
cool. So if you're listening to this, then yeah, we're doing a virtual one. We've decided to do some virtual for ease. So this episode 12 is going to be about Andrew Tate's recent interview on his podcast. Say recent, what was it, like 2-3 months ago now?
Yeah, it's the George Janko podcast, isn't it?
That's the one, yeah. So it's going to be
George Janko. I think used to be a co-host on Logan Paul's podcast.
Oh, I know he's done some stuff with his sidemen, like KSI and stuff. So that's probably why the same little circle. I did think his face looked familiar.
So that's where he's from, I believe. But basically just like didn't do a lot on that podcast. I think he was just kind of like pushed back, was one of the guys on the sofa, but didn't really actually contribute like a massive amount. And he's obviously just been like, I've got fucking more to give here. It's just gone by himself. So
we're going to kind of like do not a reaction video, like clickbait. This is going to be we've listened to it and we've both taken points from it. And we're going to talk about those points because Andrew Tate is a proper interesting guy. Like some people love him and some people hate him. So we thought, being a podcast around men's mental health and everything male, we thought it'd be quite a good idea to discuss what his thoughts are because, he's got some really interesting values and views on things. So anyone that doesn't know who Andrew Tate is, I'm just going to do a little bit of a background on him. I didn't realise he moved to Luton in the UK.
Yeah, he grew up in Luton.
I was trying to work out his accent on his podcast, and I was like, "There's some words in there that are so like English." And I'm like, then he got pictures to American, and I'm like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
So he's American British. He's a former kickboxer. He's a social media influencer and a businessman. So he also went on Big Brother. I didn't know this until I did more research.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, episode. It was season 16, I think.
He kickboxing world champion as well, like legit kickboxer.
Like, as in only lost 9 fights and did like, I think it was 87 fights in total.
Fuck, that's
and
ridiculous.
Like 36 by knockout. So he was good, like very good. But he's mainly known for his businesses that he's got, which was the Hustle University and the War Room. So like they're like coaching courses where you pay and you have they're basically like courses on like leadership, masculinity, taking accountability and male power, etc. So that's what he's been kind of like famous for, I guess, with his views on that. And I don't know what the Hustle University, I think it was very similar, but the War Room one was $8,000, to be in that part of that group.
Yeah, and there's probably like 80,000 people a week doing it.
It's crazy. The other one was, I think Hustle University was like a small subscription, like £40. But that was, when I was doing the research, I was like, that's crazy.
He's the thing is, he's created a cult, hasn't he? So anytime you create a cult, people just fucking buy whatever you sell. He's just got that, like, he's got those super fans, those people who just literally think he is walking on water, and they'll pay whatever to be a part of whatever he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. But how you been anyway? We'll go back to that. How are you?
I'm all right. Small human slept for a whole 6 hours last night. Solid.
No way.
Which is unreal. We woke up and he kind of like, you have no idea what the time is. So she like started stirring. I was like, right. Charlie was like, what's the time? I was like, I don't know, expecting it to be like 1:30. Charlie was like, it's 4 a.m. I was like, fuck off. No all three of us just completely conked out. Yeah. So that was sick. And then Yeah, all good, to be fair. Just still trying to figure stuff out, still no routine, which is, I'm so, what was the last pod we did? Was the last pod we did with Ellie? That feels like so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to figure routine out is that's been the hardest thing for me, because I'm such a structured person. I rely so heavily on knowing where I am, knowing what I'm doing, having structure, having the reliability of turning up at certain places at certain times, and like my routines, my habits literally form everything that I do. And that's just been like ripped out from underneath me, put in fucking bins. So that for me has been really difficult. That's definitely been the hardest part for me. The tiredness has been difficult. I think I said to you, I've been banned from saying I'm tired in the house because Charlie has had considerably less sleep than me. But I think women just have something sort of inbuilt within them that just enables them to deal with children. They just have that like maternal pull, that sixth sense that's just enables them to pull through. Whereas I don't think men necessarily have it. I don't have it, and I think a lot of men don't have it that strongly, where Charlie will like wake just before Darcy wakes up, and I'm like, she's already changed her nappy, screamed the house down, and then I have to be woken by Charlie physically before I even rouse. She's having to like literally fucking nudge me to wake me up. So it's like that's the difference between like male and female, I think. And so I just think females have a better way of dealing with that tiredness.
I wonder if it's to do with like, obviously they've like say produced the baby, as in like, you know, they've like carried it for 9 months, they've birthed the baby. I wonder if there's some sort of like spiritual connection there that like almost they know when the baby's going to wake up, but subconsciously don't. It's all of subconscious. And I feel like I know when David had Ren, like he was going to go to some like male like daddy and kid kind of like groups. So it was kind of like guys that have like dealt with or dealing with having a child and the connection they have with the child, etc. So I wonder if there's something there that like the females just have some sort of connection, but for guys it's almost like you have to put that extra bit of like time and effort into to kind of creating that, maybe that bond on that kind of level. So interesting.
I think it's built. Yeah, I do think it's built in for females. I also think there's like a time the child will go through these different time periods where early doors, it's all about being close to mum. Like you say, mum is the one that's birthed them. So being close to mum, getting comfort, being fed by mum. Mothers are usually the ones that take maternity leave and spend the majority of time with them. Like it's just those first 6 to 9 months are just like mum time. And sometimes it's I think it can be hard for dads sometimes because you don't like, I can't settle her sometimes. I can't settle her. And so like I'm like, I'm your dad and I can't. Sometimes I literally, Charlie's like, do you need me to settle her? I'm like, yeah. And then I give it to her. I'm like, fuck. Why is that? Like it's if I was 10 years ago, I'd have been pissed off at that. I'd have been like, why can you do that and I can't do that? Whereas now I'm just like, it's her mum, of course. The smell of her is just, that smell is comfort. The aura is comfort. And as relaxed as I am and as nice as I want to be, it just doesn't matter. I'm just not the right person. But I know that when she starts crawling and when she starts talking and wanting to play, that's when a lot of the time dads come into their element. So I think like, I just know that it's not necessarily my time right now. I cherish the good time that I have, but I know that I'm not number one. And I know that Charlie is number one, but I know that will change. It will change with time, and like I'll get my moment. So I'm just trying to like just be relaxed with it. But how are you, mate?
You can't take it personally right now.
You can't.
Like, no.
Literally can't.
Man, I'm all right. It's been a crazy few weeks, as you know. Like obviously, like Zoe's dad passed away, so I met you the day after, wasn't it? And just navigating that with self-employment and still trying to make money, still running the business. Started with my business coach a couple of weeks ago, was the second week. So yeah, it's just been all full on. It's just been pretty crazy, just trying to do things and be strong for Zoe's mum. Yeah, it's just been really mentally like there's a lot of pressure mentally. So like when I was driving to my grandma's this morning, I was like, fuck, like I need some time. And next weekend, me and the lads are going to Slam Dunk, and it was like could just about afford it with pumping money into the business and all that. I was like, just about afford it. But I know that Jay's come back from Amsterdam. I've got Saturday and Sunday with the lads. We're going to the festival on the Sunday. It's just like pure music, just proper therapeutic. I know it's going to be like really good for me to have like that time of like that bit of like refresh, and yeah, it's going to be really good. So stressed at the moment, but I know there's just ways of getting around it. So I'm chilling. Like
that's such a hard, when I've gone through times like this before, it's so hard to get that balance of like, right, I need to be there for Zoe, and I almost have to be willing to give up as much time and as much energy as possible. But at the same time, you've got a business to run, you've got money to earn, you've got your own health to think about. Like it's such a difficult balancing game. And then the internal monologue of like, am I doing the right things? Am I giving enough to each of these bits? Do I just need to go into survival mode? Like for me, that's when I've had similar periods, it's such a hard thing to navigate.
Yeah. And I feel like it's, like you said, like with the routine, you're like the routine kind of gets thrown out, and the routine has kind of get thrown out. Like I've not been to the gym as much. Like I'm trying to run every day, but then like if I don't get up because I'm sleeping, I've been getting to a period where I wake up for between 1:30 and 2:30, and I'll be awake for like 2 hours. Like, and it's bang on 1:30 or bang on 2:30, like most nights.
You want to come and feed a child?
Yeah. I'll come over.
I'd fucking rather sleep right now.
Yeah, I'll come over at 1:30 when I get up and I come around for 2 hours. Then I'll come back and go to bed. Yeah, man. So I can't complain about my sleep. To be fair, going to bed at like 9:30 and getting like
mate
that.
You can, if you're tired. This is Charlie and I keep on having this conversation. Like I've said to her, like I know that I'm not as tired as you are. I'm still allowed to be tired.
Yeah,
I can, even though I've had more sleep than you have, you're more tired. That's fine. I'm still allowed to be tired. So like you're allowed to be tired, even though you probably slept more than Charlie and more than me. You are still allowed to be tired and like still allowed to feel like you're on catch up.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it kind of fit in really well, because when I was listening to the Andrew Tate podcast, he has obviously got this kind of like baller hustle mindset, and it's like you've got to be doing this and this, and only the top 2% of males make it, and putting the effort in. I'm like, I feel like that's me at the moment. I'm trying to put my effort into so many little things, but also trying to take time away to be there for Zoe and her family. It's kind of like really difficult to like get that separation.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. It's a really, really fine line to walk. And I think for anyone listening to this who's never been in this situation, if you ever get into this situation where something happens to your partner, like a parent passing or something like that, obviously Charlie lost her dad I think 2 years ago now. I actually think sometimes literally just asking them what they need is the best thing for it. So since Darcy's been born, we've been doing family meetings. We started doing family meetings maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before Darcy arrived, just on a Sunday, sit down, telly off, face to face, speak. What was good for you this week? What works? What are your wins? All of these sorts of stuff. And then also like, what do you need from me over the next 7 days? And the week after, how well did I deliver on those? And it makes it sound like the relationship's transactional, but I honestly believe that's something that will enormously benefit our relationship moving forwards. And I think not enough people directly ask each other, like, what do you need from me? And if I'm honest, I've not delivered that well on the things that she's required. So this, and that even that in itself is good reflection, to be like, fuck, that week she actually asked me to do those things. I didn't write it down. Ironically, I was like, I just didn't put it I didn't put it in my
Yeah,
diary. So I was
yeah.
like, so then I didn't deliver on the stuff. And she was like, what the fuck is the point of me asking you to do this stuff if you don't deliver? Like, the point of the meeting is so that you understand what I need from you, and then you just don't do it. And I was like, shit, this is like but again, it's just an admin thing. Like, just fucking write it down. And I now get a reminder on my phone to tell me, like, make sure Charlie eats the supplements, or like whatever it is, whatever the thing is that was important to her on that week, or the things. But I do think like your life would be easier if you were able to say to Zoe, like, what do you need from me? Like, do you need me to be in the house, or like, can I go to the gym? Is that going to bother you? It sounds like you're not. I think a lot of guys will be like, well, it's not that females shouldn't be dictating your life. Like, I'm not on a lead, I can go and do those things when I want. But sometimes you need to understand whether actually they need you more in the house, and your presence, you might sit there and not do anything, but your presence in the house for that time means more to them, and it's more important than like you going to the gym. Like you said, you've less sessions than normal, but it's just you're being a presence, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely going to help. Might do that this week on the lead up to the funeral, like, and then I'm away Saturday to Monday, so it'd be quite good to be like, what do you need this week? Because this is what I need to do. So can I navigate it around there? One thing seems to be egg and cress sandwiches. Just a request for egg and cress sandwiches for the last couple of days. That's what it's like for lunch. That's what she's wanting. I was like, I made a really nice turkey pasta bake last night. She's like, I want an egg and cress sandwich. I was like, cool.
Thick white bread.
Yeah, like proper, just classic egg and cress. To be fair, I was quite.
I don't know. There's much better, actually.
Nah, not at all.
I feel like when you're in the mood for something like that, and it delivers. Oh,
bang on. So yeah, Andrew Tate. Obviously, what's your thoughts on him?
I think he's very interesting. I think he's very clever. I think he fully understands how to polarize people to get a reaction, to get buy-in. I think when you polarize people, you get opinions, and quite often when you polarize people, you do get buy-in from people that align with those views. They're like, fuck, he's had the balls to say that. I actually agree with him. I like him. I'm going to follow him. And then, like I said, he's built up this cult. But it wasn't a mistake. He's done it on purpose. It's been very purposeful, the way he's gone about it, then bleeds into the courses that he does, the content that he pumps out, all of this stuff, the way he holds himself. And so, yeah, I think he's really interesting. I do think he says a lot of things purely just to get reactions. I think he says a lot of things purely for the clickbait. I've listened to some of his stuff in quite a lot of detail. He's not as sort of overtly sexist as he comes across as. He's not as unreasonable as he comes across as. I think in some of the stuff, particularly maybe the stuff from like 4 or 5 years ago, he comes across as really unreasonable. But actually, if you go and dig deeper into his content, some of the stuff that he says makes a lot of sense. It's just been taken out of context for those clickbaity things that he's then sort of like come to fame for. So yeah, I think he's really interesting. There's a lot of stuff that I actually do agree with. It's a lot of stuff he speaks about, and I'm like, yeah, fucking fair play. Like I can't argue with that, or I think you've got a good point there. And then there's some other bits that I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? I can't, even with all the context, I can't get on board with that. I don't don't agree with it. So yeah, I think he's very interesting. I'm not all in on him at all. I think there's a lot to take from him, and I think there's also a lot to ignore that he says. So yeah, what for yourself?
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I get what he was doing with the War Room courses and what he was doing with the Hustle University, with the, learning leadership, learning how to be a powerful male, learning how to take accountability and all those things, which I think, guys should do to a certain extent, especially like us being self-employed. Like, we make money and we're accountable to making that money. Like, that's on us. Like, can't just sit around and fucking draw pretty pictures and hope that everyone like buys it. You know what I mean? It's like there's so many things that I agree with what he says, but like you, like there's so many things where I'm like, I like where he is. Like he says not as sexist as he comes across. However, some of the comments he has made, where he's like he has a lot of respect for women, but the way that he's like, I am more powerful than them, and I'm like, that's great, but no, like the way that he would then talk to a woman. And one example on the podcast that I was on, when he's saying about if a woman, like when they're talking about COVID, and he's like, if my girlfriend came in and said, right, we've got to do this and that, he just says shush. Like I would never shush a woman, like because I've got like a respect for them. I'd just approach it in a different way. But for him, he sees that like he's like, I'll look after you and you just do what you want. But then his way of doing that is being like, I can then talk to you the way that I want to. And I'm like, nah, I don't agree with those types of things. But I agree with his mentality of like, if you want something, you've got to fucking go and get it and earn it for yourself. And I feel like we spoke about it quite a lot of like, what should guys be now? It's like, should they be super emotional or should they be like super alpha? And I feel like the mix, having the mix between the two is obviously like, it's being like a real struggle. People are at like a fork in the road being like, I need to be emotionally available, but I also need to be like an alpha. And he's very alpha in that sense. But
so this goes, do you remember the other week when I said like, can you, I think it was on the last pod that we recorded at Leicester, how do you be the alpha guy with the Lamborghini and not be a complete prick? And this is, again, it's that same battle, isn't it? Like he doesn't strike me as someone that's particularly, he will be very emotionally intelligent, but he doesn't show it.
No,
it's not something he's showcasing as a strength. But you could find loads of guys that showcase emotional intelligence as a strength, but don't have that aspirational stuff. There's like so few people that have that balance of the emotional intelligence crossed with the masculinity, crossed with the visible wealth and success. And again, it's such a gray area. Like it's a fucking huge gray area. How do you combine all of that stuff?
I know. Like, how do you like? How can you almost be like a well-rounded person of all of the things that you need to be in that sector of like, how like without like being super positive without someone being like that's super like you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing this. You should be better at this. And you're like, I'm just trying to be all-rounded. I'm trying to be emotional. I'm trying to be accountable. I'm trying to fucking hustle my way through like the business. I'm trying to, and then everyone's like, well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't like want all those things. Or you should be like, be more emotional on that. And I'm like, well, I can get it. I really get how people really hate him in that sense of what he does. But so on some of my notes, like he's obviously very known for his like misogyny and like the way that he comes across with the Warrior Room course in particular, with the power, like male empowerment. People are seeing that as like toxic, of being like it's all about them making males become more selfish. And obviously there's the nice guy effect where it's like guys can just be like, say yes to things, and women might see them as a bit of a pushover. So maybe he's pushing that kind of idea of like, if you are a no guy, then you stand on your own 2 feet, but then you also become like very toxic and you become a dick because you're always going to say, you're always going to be like so selfish that like people are going to be like, oh, that guy's just a dick.
I was thinking about this a little bit this morning. Like, do you maybe need different versions of yourself for different situations? Do you need to bring out different versions of yourself when you're in different environments? For example, so the podcast that I was listening to this morning, they were talking about how the attributes of successful businessmen quite often are to the detriment of their personal lives. So the alpha male, egotistical, competitive, driven, narcissistic, those attributes really enhance someone's potential for success in a business environment, in certain business environments anyway.
Yeah.
And quite often when you take top 0.1% of businessmen, they are a lot of the time the attributes that they have, but those attributes have been detrimental in their personal life because they haven't been soft enough, they haven't been empathetic enough, they haven't created enough time for their family, like all of those things. But how do you have to switch from the guy that runs the business is Matt A and you're him when you're in the business, and then Matt B comes home and you turn into a different person? Because like, how do you be empathetic without becoming soft? Yeah. That's my question, because I don't get it right now. This is something I'm really trying to work on. Like I can either be direct and assertive and cut out all empathy, or I can be empathetic. But when I'm in an empathetic state, which I struggle to be, when I do get there and I'm softer, I then don't know where the line is to then, do you know what I mean? Where's the line of saying like, that's enough empathy, that's enough subtlety. Now what? Like, where do I stop? Where is the stopping point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's another example in that podcast where he's in prison, in jail, for those 3 months, and he says he has like a 5-minute phone call a day, and he was on the phone to his family, and he was like, right, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, and they were like asking him if he was okay, and he's like, I don't want to talk about that, like, need to do this, need to do that. That's almost like that. He's still in that, Andrew Tate A mode where it's like business, got to do this, got to do that. But then his family are like, we want to know if you're okay. That kind of like empathetic side. It's like find that balance and that switch would be really difficult. And I feel like that's why people that's why people not hate him, but like they don't like his views, because he's kind of creating this environment where you don't have that empathetic side. It's all about like the hustle. If you want to be on a yacht in 10 years time worth 50 million and have girls, supermodels around you, you want to have a Lamborghini waiting for you at the port, you want to have all these things, then he's like, fuck everyone else, it's me. But then, like you said, the relationships, he's never going to have proper relationships with women in that, or, whoever in that sense, because they're not going to be used to it. So all these like younger lads that are like being like, I want that, I want this, because they see his lifestyle, they see how he's like living, obviously before whatever's going on now with him being arrested, and they're like, I want a bit of that, so I'm going to sign up to his course. But then obviously those guys, they suffer for home with family, they suffer at home with relationships because they haven't got that side.
It's the extremism, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is extremism, to like creating that cult of extremists, but like people don't see it as like a threatening extremism. They just see it as like just creating a bunch of dicks. Like,
yeah, completely. One of the quotes, so my first quote that I've got on my notes ties in so nicely with this. I didn't cry, my eyes leaked as I achieved. And I listened to the pod quite a while ago, so I can't quite remember the context of this, and I've written it down, so it obviously made me think, what the fuck? I
think that's when he was either in prison or just come out, and he said he was doing push-ups and he was like, his eyes were leaking. And then George was like, what do you mean? So you were crying? He's like, no, they're just leaking. But then he was like, what made them leak?
This is the whole problem with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You can't just say, for me, a part of top tier masculinity is being able to say that you're wrong, is being able to show emotion, being able to accept, like, whether it's overwhelm or sadness or anything. Like, and this is something I have part of this. Extreme ownership is like a massive part of me. I can accept anything that I've done, I will take on the chin, whether it's made someone sad, whether it makes me sad, whether it's detrimental to whatever. I will always accept responsibility if something's my own fault. I'm not very good at actually crying, but if something makes me cry, I will openly be like, I bawled my eyes out. Whereas I can't get my head around the fact that what the fuck? I didn't cry, my eyes leaked as I achieved, mate. Have a fucking word.
I know, yeah, because what I feel like what's then happening with that is like all these younger lads that are buying into this and his coaching is basically saying to them like, you can't be like if you're emotional then you're a pussy, you know what I mean? Like
literally, yeah.
And for me, being able to show emotion and control your emotion is so much more masculine, because you know when to be emotional, you know when to, like you said, you know when you are feeling a certain way. That acknowledgement of knowing when you are sad and being like, fuck, I need to take a minute to be like, whoa, what's going on? Like that shows more strength than being like, oh, fuck that, like, well, I'm not gonna cry. Oh, crying's for a pussy. Is like, it's no, but that's literally what he's almost promoting with just that one sentence.
Yeah, and it's he obviously needed to go to a primary school where Harry was working so that he could learn to deal with his emotions properly. I feel like if there's one thing that comes up consistently in almost every episode, it's how important what Harry's doing is going to be moving forwards, because I feel like just about every issue comes from the fact that kids don't know how to deal with their emotions, and kids turn into adults, and we end up with adults that don't know how to deal with their emotions, and just bulldozing your way through everything. Like those guys that are then subject to that level of toxic masculinity they will all struggle with relationships for their whole life. Please. For like they are potentially nice guys that get on all right in relationships with their families and with girls and stuff like that, and they're potentially about to, like you said earlier, take a right turning that is going to send them maybe towards financial success, but it's going to be massively detrimental towards personal relationships.
Yeah, like the guys I assume, you know, the younger lads that are buying into it in their like early 20s, I kind of looked at like demographic of like lads being like, right, I want to have that Lamborghini when I'm 30, etc. Like they're going to get to that age, not have had proper serious relationships because they don't know how to deal with it, because they're so focused on what they're doing. Yes, they'll be very financially well off. They'll have maybe some good businesses they would have gone through. They would have like a group of people around them that are all probably very successful, and they might get the yacht, they might get the Lamborghini, but like they won't experience so much more like life experiences, like having relationships and going through breakups and things that can actually make you a lot stronger than what those being. Like obviously, like company like Represent, really cool company. Like I do freelance work for them and things, but you listen to all the podcasts with George, and only until recently he's found like he's in a relationship and he's found that like it's working. But he was very much like that, like had to get on that hustle, which is great. You know, if you want to own a business and you want to make money and you want to make it work, you have to do the hustle side. But I feel like maybe he would have never done the Andrew Tate, because you can tell he's like a nice guy and has empathy and everything. But it's, you can see that where it can have effects on you when you can get to a certain age and be like, shit, like I focused so much on one thing for so long that you're like, what about everything else in my life? What about
I shared a pod this morning, Chris Williamson, number 784 with Robin Sharma. Why $1 billion won't make you happy. And he, within the first 20 minutes, he says that he had an inquiry to coach a guy who was like top 1% wealth in the world. He said he goes into his house, biggest house he's ever seen, goes past loads of like big art collection, goes downstairs. He says he can smell like the cigar smoke. He was like real like movie shit. And he sat with this guy and spoke to this, like let this guy speak to him for 2 hours about his business and the amount of wealth that he'd amassed. And he said, and who do you have to share that with? And the guy said, no one.
Yeah.
And like that's what we're creating. He was unhappy, top 1% of earners, unhappy. Not even top 1%, probably top 0.1%.
Yeah.
Unhappy, has literally everything he could ever want apart from people to share.
That's crazy when you think about it, isn't it? Like even like Zoe, the ex-CEO of the company she works for had just stepped down because he was like, I'm so depressed and I'm happy. And he was on 250K a year, you know, or whatever it was, a good sum of money, but broken relationship, divorced, not happy. Just, it just shows that like it's great to have those things, but you've got to also have that network around you that you want to be able to share with. I'd love my business to, in 10 years it will be making some serious money. But I'm lucky that I know I'll have people around me that I can share it with, because I want it to. I want to be able to share my wealth with other people. So, I could sack everyone else off and probably make 4 or 5 times the amount of money that he'll make. But then I'll get to that point and I'll be like, oh, where is everyone? Like, no one's come on this journey with me. But if I have a very successful business, I can have a good family, like support everybody that I want to. I can, buy a motorhome for mum and dad and all those things. Then great. Like, but I can give something back to people that have helped me and supported me. Yeah, you don't want to get to that point where you're sitting in like a $2 billion house and you're like, well, it's just me tonight. What should I do?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think we spoke about this. One of my thought processes this morning was, do you have to have felt the wealth in order to be at peace with the fact that you don't need wealth to be happy? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because it's always the people who have been wealthy who are like, wealth is not the thing that provides happiness. Now, you can only discover that by having wealth in the first place. Yeah. But I sometimes wonder whether it's possible for someone who's not wealthy to, well, it must be, because you go to third world countries like Asia and stuff like that, and people are happy with what they've got. So it must be. But I wonder whether it's like a bit of a crisis in this country where we almost have a little bit and we have a glimpse of what's possible, and that's what creates the turmoil.
Yeah, it's almost like you're never going to be happy with what you've got, but what you've got is actually very good in comparison to what other places and other people in the world have got. And that's what I've realized when the first time I went to the Philippines. I was like, fucking hell, like, we are so lucky in the UK for what we've got. And second time I went back there, I was like, fucking hell, like, we are so lucky with what we've got in the UK. Third time I went back, I was like, shit, like, I'm happy with what I've got now because it's a lot more than what other people here have got. But other people there, they're so happy with what they've got because that's what they know. They don't know what earning 30, 40K a year is like in certain places. They're just living day to day, cash in hand, and they're the happiest people because they're like, they haven't got the stress of it. They haven't got like, but here, people want to, buy from very luxury clothing brands, and they're like, I've got to have this, and they feel like when they wear it, they're like, oh, I'm better than everyone else because I've got this jacket that cost me 350 quid. And it's like, but then they're not happy with that. They want the more and more. So yeah, I think people are here, they get a bit of a taste of it and be like, I want more and more and more because it's going to make me happy. But they'll realize that the money can buy opportunities, but it doesn't necessarily buy happiness. You'll have opportunities to do some incredible things, but once it's gone, it's kind of like gone. Like you're happy with that thing, and then it's gone. You're like, right, I need to find the next one. I'm currently reading a book. I have completely forgot what it's called, but it's by a monk who trained in the biggest monastery in the UK, which is in Scotland, which is crazy. Apparently, it's one of the biggest in Europe, if not the world. Of all places to have
Scottish monks.
Yeah, proper crazy. He left his, like, basically had some real bad depression, left his job and everything, and went to be a monk and sort his life out. Ended up doing that for his whole life and has done for the last like 30 years. And he talks about how people only find happiness in certain situations. For example, New Year's Eve. It's kind of like this big thing of like, New Year's Eve, gonna have a big party, we're gonna get together, we're gonna do this, it's gonna be like this, we're gonna have the best time. And then they get to it and it's either like, yeah, it was a good night, had loads of fun, or they get to it and be like, oh, that was a real letdown, and they feel really like unhappy and not satisfied because it wasn't this big amazing thing. It's like, well, just don't have the expectation and don't go looking for that happiness of like. That's why I think a lot of people in this country go out on a weekend and have this we have this binge mentality because we work all week, we go and get smashed Friday, Saturday, thinking it's going to be the best time ever, and we get to Sunday and be like, why the fuck do we do that? I don't feel any happier. And people are always searching for this like happiness of just be happy with what you've got now, because then you're being more at peace and not have to do all these things to try and
the best way I can explain that is, if you've ever been, there's two ways. If you've ever been on a night out and it was like 10-10 night out, and then you try and replicate it. So you're like, oh, I remember that night. What did we do? And you think back and you're like, oh, we had pre-drinks here, and then we did this, and you try and replicate it. It's never the same.
No.
Like, I remember going out with one of my best mates on a New Year's Eve, and it's honestly one of the best nights I've ever had. It was just me and him, which is the fucking best night. We could never replicate that. We could go out 10 times and we will never replicate the feeling, because there's so many variables to it. It's the same if you ever go on holiday somewhere for the first time. You can just you like, if you go on holiday somewhere for the first time and have like the best experience, if you try and replicate that the next year, it won't be as good. And the reason that neither of these things are as good is because you have the expectation on it. So it's exactly what you said. You have the expectation of that night out, and that's what you're comparing to. You have that expectation of that first holiday, and you're comparing it to that. Whereas the first time you went, you never had an expectation. And so the outcome might not have been like a 10-10 outcome, but it felt incredible because you had nothing to measure it against. And I think that's the biggest problem a lot of the time. I completely agree with you. Like, comparison is the thief of joy, and expectation is I guess a type of comparison.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that with that Andrew Tate, it's like when those young lads get that Lamborghini, whether they're going to be like, great, I've got it now, I've driven it around, I now need another car that's even faster, even better. I need a McLaren, I need an Aston Martin. And I feel like who was it? It was Stephen Bartlett, I think, said that when he got his Lamborghini, he sold it like a year later. It was like, great, don't need that. He was like, when I was 25, he was like, that's why he's like, by the time I'm 25, I want to have a Lamborghini. So that's what his aim was. And then he realizes now that was such a stupid aim. He was like, I don't need to spend that kind of money on a car on happiness when I can just go get it by traveling the world and doing those things. And I feel like that's almost what Andrew Tate is going to building this army of people that are they're never going to be satisfied with what they've got. So they're just going to just keep spreading their views and being like, this is where we have to be. And it would just create like a generation of guys where they're going to grow up and not be as happy as they think they should be, because they're always going to be chasing for everything. And it's almost like, because they're the guys that are going to buy into it now, and what Harry's doing, working in like primary schools with guys with emotions, it's almost like these lads should have gone through it. Because if they'd gone through it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they get to the point where being like, oh, Andrew Tate guy, they'll be like, well, I'm really good at my emotions, so I'll fuck him off. Like, don't need him.
Another quote I had was, men shouldn't be happy, they should be stressed.
Yeah.
I think we've just, the last 15 minutes, decided that that's fucking a load of shit.
Yeah. I'd say I'm stressed, but I am happy. But that's just, just general life stress. Not like, I think that quote is just so shit, because that's basically saying like you shouldn't be emotional. Everything should be work. The way you should look at everything is work. Relationships, work.
So, sorry, I'm well aware that I'm saying all of my quotes that I've got. But so, I completely agree with that, basically. With what you've said, I completely agree with what you said. I actually think it's the complete opposite. I think men should be happy and they shouldn't be stressed. Stressed in sort of speech marks. Like, stress just comes with everything. Stress comes with work. Stress comes with working out. I think it's good to have stress to stress test yourself, because that's a requirement of life. Without a bit of stress, you don't really know what not stress feels like. Without rough, you don't know what smooth feels like, that kind of thing. But just to highlight how heavily he believes in this. Here's a quote: "No wonder you're fucking broke. Festivals are crap. Concerts are crap. Clubs are crap. What's fun? Nothing's fun. The only thing that's fun is masculine achievement and being respected for being monumentally successful and competent."
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those like, oh, fucking hell. Like
My bro has some problems.
yeah, because he's not,
He
he's
needs some
like,
therapy.
yeah, he's very successful, but everyone thinks he's a dick. So
Yeah, like nice one, mate. But Christ, are they really your views?
yeah, it's almost like nothing makes him happier than him waking up and being like, right, how much more money have I got in my bank account this morning versus yesterday? Like that's the only thing that's kind of driven him to be happy in that sense. Like,
And the thing is, though, I think what we can see from the outside is like he obviously finds business brings him a lot of pleasure.
yeah,
I would say that his bank account being bigger today than it was yesterday brings him happiness.
yeah,
He's just not. Well, I would actually say that he's not accepting that it's bringing him happiness.
yeah,
I think he's framing it in a different way. He's presenting it in a different way. He's not calling it happiness. He's calling it maybe success or whatever. But I actually also think that he's almost declining happiness.
yeah.
It does bring him happiness. That is what makes him happy. Being with his brother clearly makes him happy. Having a small circle clearly makes him happy. His businesses clearly make him happy. But he will never brand them as happy. Because for him, that's too emotional.
It's almost like a sign of weakness. It's like it's emotion. Yeah. One of his other, it's a very small quote, but it was like, "Depression isn't real; it's situational." Now, this is interesting because he basically says, if you tell yourself you're depressed, then you become more depressed. If you tell yourself everything is going to be okay, and depression isn't real, then you're telling your mind everything is okay. And he basically refers to the Robin Williams, like as an example. Like Robin Williams, for me, like probably my favorite actor, like an actor in my favorite film, Hook. He says Robin Williams went to a therapist and talked about his depression. So they talked about how sad he was. So he became more and more sad. And then he eventually jumped off a building. So he basically, like, his therapist was telling him he was sad. Robin Williams is telling himself he's sad. So nothing happened. He just got even more sad. Like, obviously, we are very, like, trying to build a community of guys that want to be open and talk about how they're feeling, whether it's sad or not. So I've felt like I've been depressed and talked about my feelings and said, like, I'm sad. So I've kind of acknowledged it. But I think it's like where he's saying it's not real. I think it is definitely real, but it's then how you can, how you talk about it. It's how you talk about it and how you talk about getting through it. I feel like where he's saying, if you're telling yourself you're depressed and you become more depressed, it's just it's again, like he's basically saying to people like depression isn't real. So all these lads are like, they will never understand that if one of their mates is suffering, that isn't part of this little circle of, Andrew Tate's tribe, they won't be able to recognize it. They'll see it as a sign of weakness.
I think there are two separate things here. And I think we could, I don't know how they're defined, but we could probably say that one is mental health and one is mental illness. You can be clinically depressed, and for the purpose of this conversation, we could put that in the mental illness category. Yeah. And when you're depressed, properly actually depressed, and I've been through bouts of this after my car accident, nothing and no one is pulling you out of that apart from time. Yeah. You can put yourself in the right situations. You can surround yourself with the right people. It may help over a period of time. It may fast track you slightly. But the problem with being depressed is you're angry that you're not doing anything. You get angry if anyone suggests doing something. You can't, like, there's no rhyme or reason. There's no wrong or right. You don't want to be with anyone. You don't want to be on your own. Like, you can't win when you're depressed. It's a battle between you, and there is no fucking escape sometimes. Yeah. And you're firmly locked in that room. And I think when you're in an actual depressed state, and I would say I've been in a fairly light depressed state, there's it is just a time thing. Whereas when you're feeling a little bit low, sometimes you need a fucking kick up the arse, and you need to be like, right, let's go. Better self-talk. Let's surround myself with the right people. Let's start taking care of myself. Let's start training. Let's start going for walks in the morning. Not all of these things at the same time, but like these are the sort of things that can help you and can turn negative mental health into positive mental health. And I think these two are often viewed as the same things. And you have people talking about clinical depression, saying that depression is not a real thing, when actually what they're talking about is low mood.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have people who actually get depressed getting offended by people saying that depression is not a real thing.
Yeah.
But they're talking about two different things. And I think what most males, well, I don't know, actually, that is most males, but what I think most males experience is low mood. And that is something that can be turned around. You can figure that out. You can get yourself into better environments. You can give yourself a kick up the arse. Sometimes you do need to be a little bit more assertive with yourself. You do need to challenge yourself a bit more. You do need to push yourself. But I think that's a completely different mental state to someone who is depressed, who actually just needs to fucking hang in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because like clinical depression is also, it's like a chemical imbalance. So, you know, your body's going through something that it's almost kind of out of your control in a way. So it's the way you're feeling of like not being able to do anything, be with anybody, not be alone. And yeah, like this last few weeks has been super difficult. And today was like a real low, being like, fuck, like I could have just been like, right, I'm not going to go out. I'm just going to just going to chill and do nothing. But I was like, no, I need to still do stuff. I had a low mood, so I just need to go pick myself back up.
Exactly.
And it's like being able to identify that. But I feel like what Andrew Tate's doing is basically being like, it's all bullshit. And which is, I think is just not good that's very toxic masculinity. It's almost like that old school generation of being like, well, fucking depression wasn't around 50 years ago. It probably was. People just dealt with it in different ways. It probably wasn't as recognized as it is. So people just didn't know, you know?
Yeah.
For sure. And he then went on to being like, happiness is bad for males, being proud is better. Like, and basically being proud of what you achieve. But like,
say that again.
Happiness is bad for males, being proud is better. So it's kind of like not being happy with what you've got, but being proud. So it kind of went back to how how he's almost in denial of all these things that he's got, businesses, his brother, close circle of friends. They actually make him happy, but he's like, no, I'm just proud that I've got that. But really, they are making him happy, but he just doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, so say it's that thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to say that he's happy. And I do think you're right. I think it's probably like a weakness thing. He doesn't want to show that weakness.
Yeah, he doesn't want people to think that he's a weak. They want him to see as this big alpha. And one thing that, like, I wouldn't say I agree with him, but I also, I do agree to a certain level, actually. I know we've said a lot of hate of what not hate. There's a lot of things that we're like, don't agree with him. But this, where he says he doesn't talk to negative people, he limits himself of what he's exposed to on social media when he had social media. And for me, that's kind of like what I've done over the past few years. I've kind of just cut out the people that I didn't really need or in my life, so to speak, or not necessarily cut them out, but just like, I'm like, nah, don't want to entertain your negative views. I'm just going to stick to my core group of mates that are really like, we're there for each other. We support each other. And that's what I want. Surround myself with people that are like doing good, being better selves, like bettering themselves. And so this comes to like my social media. So I've actually been going through my personal account. When I see something pop up and I'm like, I can't be asked to follow that anymore, I'll close it down. So I'll unfollow. I've unfollowed loads of meme accounts because it was great and they're fun to see, but a lot of them are quite negative. And I was like, actually, I don't want that in my life. Like,
that's interesting. Yeah.
I don't want to see some of the stuff they're posting because I'm like, it's just clickbaity bullshit that I'm like, I don't want to. I want to go on social media I want to feel motivated. I want to go on there and be like, love what this person's doing. I want to almost like have my social media as like what I would class as my close group of friends. I want to see what people are doing. I want to be on there. I don't want to be going on there and seeing something really shit. And I'm like, oh no, I don't need to. And I know this is going to cause a lot of backlash and people. So precursor,
we're about to get cancelled.
We're about to get cancelled. Well, I'm about to get cancelled, and people are going to think very low of me. But I actually unfollowed Dua Lipa the other day.
Go on.
You know Dua Lipa, the singer? I was just like, actually, why do I follow her? I mean, I know why I follow her, but how does it benefit me?
I don't need to see this sexy girl dance every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, how does it benefit me? I was like, you know what? I'm going to unfollow. And it was really funny because me and some of the lads went to Carvel and Nets for a barbecue, and they were talking about Dua Lipa, and I was like, I'm not even going to say that I unfollowed her, like, because I don't want to admit it yet.
Not worth. Yeah,
but it's one of those where I'm like, what value is she actually bringing into my life?
Yeah, I get it. I completely get it.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and you've just been honest with it.
Yeah, being like, what? Like, yes, she's attractive, but I have a wife at home. I'm super happy. All of my mates are like, oh, she's amazing. I'm like, yeah, but you're never going to meet her. So just like, you get rid. I don't need. Yeah. And I feel like it's things like that, which are quite. So I understand what he's saying there, you know, being like surrounded. That's almost, but again, like the way he said that makes him sound like a proper dick. But it's just basically, if he'd put it in a sense of like, I just surround myself with positive people instead. That comes across so much nicer than being like, I don't talk to negative people.
I
think they're all shit.
It's just about creating an echo chamber that you want to be in.
Yeah.
That's what it is, really, isn't it? It's like all the stuff that you read and that you consume, you want it to be positive and like your vibe rather than stuff that like is sucking you into like either a non-productive or a negative place. So
and I don't doom scroll as much. If like, you know, if I'm find myself on there for a few minutes just having a quick scroll, I'm like, I'm on social media, I'm going to do something productive with the business, I'm going to engage with my customers, I'm going to message more people. Like I see my time on social media now as a way of pushing myself differently than just sitting there being like, great, cool, you know, more cat videos that I do send to Zoe, but like I'm like, right, I'll send 1 or 2 a day and that's it. Like
limit it.
Yeah, I tried to limit like how much. If I'm gonna be like, right, okay, maybe I need 5 minutes to just fucking scrolling this shit, then just watch a couple of skate videos. Like that for me is, I'd rather do that than just sit on there for half an hour just scrolling for no reason. So I don't
wasting your life.
Yeah, I've seen Dua Lipa's ass. I don't need to see it again. I'm done.
I took a mental photo. We're out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I bet there's gonna be so many people being like, "What the fuck? Why?"
Is this guy sure he just got married?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh, hey.
My other notes.
Should we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that's about it for my notes. Really, I think it's just. I know when you mentioned coming like and talking about it, I think it was really interesting because we've spoken about the male toxicity for quite a while now, and I feel like he's the perfect like guy to be like. That's what he's known for. And we needed to unpick some of what he said because I feel like people hate him or they love him. So
I think it would be interesting to do like more of this style stuff, but also maybe unpick some of the stuff that we agree with more than the stuff like we've just gone on a lot of negative stuff. I think it would be interesting to go over some positive stuff. I don't actually have any positive notes. But I do think that would be interesting. Yeah,
to be like, because the only thing really that I guess is so positive out of that was the not surrounding yourself with negative people. Like I get his point on that.
Yeah,
but no, 100%. So we'll wrap it up. So thank you for listening. If you've watched on YouTube, then it just would have been an image. So thanks for watching that image for an hour, 50 minutes. Give us a like, subscribe, rating on Spotify. Really appreciate any kind of help towards it on there. The better ratings we get, the more we can build a community. And watch this space.
Watch this space. Living the dream. Cheers, my bro.